This is about the night I found out my brother was in trouble with some dangerous people. I had no idea about the terror that was about to come my way. We're a family of 4. I was 15 at the time, and my older brother was 18. It was a Saturday night. My brother had been out with his friends when a dreaded phone call came to my parents. All I remember was that I was in my room playing Halo Reach on my Xbox when I heard my mom start freaking out, crying. I got really scared and went to see what was wrong. The police had called. Someone had forced my brother off his bike with their car. Obviously, we were all shaken and really scared. They said my brother's leg was broken. My parents rushed to get their coats on to go to the hospital. They asked if I was okay to stay home alone. I said yes, and they left. I was, of course, really worried for my brother, but I really didn't want to go to the hospital and see him in any kind of bad condition. Before my dad left, he tried calming down my mom, telling her that my brother was going to be okay. Seeing my dad like that made me feel better. I had a feeling my mom was just being overdramatic, like any mom would be. I continued playing Halo for a few more minutes when I heard the front door open. I had my bedroom door closed by this point. I turned off the TV and Xbox when I heard the door. I listened for my parents, thinking maybe they forgot something at home. But I didn't hear any voices. After a few seconds of silence, I went to my door and quietly opened it, then walked over to the ledge and banister that overlooked the living room. The lights were off, but there were 4 tall people standing in my living room. They were clearly not my family. I was so petrified that I was frozen for a second before I could quietly walk back into my room and shut the door as quietly as I could in my trepidation. But it wasn't quiet enough, and I knew it. They had to have heard the door click shut, even if just slightly. I hurried to my bed and hid underneath. I pressed myself as far back against the wall as I could. There was a short period that felt like forever, that I was anticipating my bedroom door opening. And it did. At that moment, I thought I was going to die. I heard footsteps walk into the room. I couldn't tell how many people. It may have been 1, it may have been 2. I heard the footsteps move towards me, and I heard the covers on my bed being played with. Then, silence. My heart was in my throat. All I did was lie still and hold my breath, hoping they wouldn't look underneath. They stood there for a long while. I didn't move a muscle. Then, the footsteps moved around the room, towards the closet door. Then, silence for a few seconds. And then, I heard them open the closet. They moved things around inside, like they were searching for something, before they walked back over to my bed. I could see their feet right in front of me. Then, they got down on their knees. I stayed completely still. It felt like they were about to look under the bed. Then a voice called out something from the hallway. They hesitated for a second, then got up and left. It wasn't until a couple of hours later that I heard my parents return. I ran downstairs to them. The front door was left ajar by the people who broke in, and they had stolen a number of valuables from our house. It was a night that just went from bad to worse for our family. My parents were in such a rush when they left for the hospital that they apparently didn't even lock the front door. The truth came out later. These weren't random burglars. My brother told us everything. He owed these guys drug money. They had been after him for weeks about the money. They had kept finding him and threatening him. That night, while he was riding back home, they swerved their car at his bike, forcing him off the road. He crashed into a parked car at speed, breaking his leg. While he was lying there hurt, they cornered him. They gave him one final opportunity to pay up on the spot. As he couldn't, they gave him an ultimatum. Give them our address so they could take whatever they wanted as payment, or they'd kill him. They knew he lived with our parents, so they waited outside our house until they saw our parents' car leave for the hospital. Once they knew the house would be empty, they came in to collect their payment. A few years ago, during winter, Our small town had a heavy snowstorm that made me hunker down. I had plans to meet my girlfriend for dinner, but we ended up canceling because of the weather. The roads were completely covered in snow, and on the news, they were warning about power outages and tree branches snapping under the weight of the snow. I was alone at the time, spending the day on my couch watching the TV, keeping up with the news. At 8 p.m., the power fully shut off. I waited for a few minutes, expecting it to come back on, but after a while, I realized it probably wasn't going to return until after the storm was over. I had to resort to my phone to keep up with the news, which was thankfully fully charged. I'm kind of obsessive about keeping it plugged in whenever I can. Something about being alone in total darkness made me uneasy. I sat on the couch and started scrolling through the news on my phone for any updates, until I heard uneven, unsteady knocking at the front door, followed by slurred shouting. It scared me, especially since I wasn't expecting any visitors. I stayed where I was for a minute, considering that maybe it was just a neighbor needing help, or wanting to ask if my power was out too. I went up to the door and looked through the peephole. I caught a brief glimpse of movement before whoever was out there disappeared into the snowy darkness. I went to the window and pulled back the curtain, trying to let in whatever faint light was outside. Then I heard a slurred, aggressive voice, demanding to be let in. I turned toward where the sound came from, but couldn't see anything in the dark. I could hear more movement, like someone pacing back and forth. Moving to another window for a better view, the voice grew angrier and more aggressive. Almost right on cue, a car's headlights lit up the front of my house for a second before disappearing down the street. In that second, I made out a figure not far from my house, staggering around and looking confused. I had no way to know who they were or what they were doing, but by the sounds of it, they started stumbling directly toward my house. The temperature was well below freezing. Getting more unnerved, I double-checked to make sure all the doors and windows were shut and locked, and went back to the couch, trying to distract myself with my phone. The signal now was very weak, barely loading anything. Less than 5 minutes had passed when I heard glass shatter. It came from the narrow window next to the front door. A second later, I heard the door unlock from the inside. Then I heard the door open, and uneven footsteps coming my way. I hid behind the couch. I had no time to run anywhere else. Angry yelling started as the stumbling footsteps approached the living room. I stayed behind the couch, listening. I didn't know what to do. The cell service was too weak to call for help. Instead of stopping, the person headed straight for the stairs, muttering something slurred about needing to lie down. I stayed behind the couch, frozen, listening as they went up. A few minutes passed. Then I heard loud snoring coming from upstairs. I waited a little longer, making sure they were completely out. Then, as quietly as possible, I got up and headed for the stairs. I tiptoed past the guest bedroom and peeked inside. They were sprawled face down on the bed, passed out. I kept moving and went straight to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. Then into the ensuite, locking that door too. Now I was 2 doors away from them. The signal was better upstairs. I called 911. I knew it would take them a while to get here in this weather, but I had no choice. When the police arrived, I stayed in my room. I could faintly hear them entering through the front door and announcing themselves as they came in.
This is the police.
Then, I heard them walking inside. I stayed put until one of them called out that it was safe. Then I unlocked the ensuite and bedroom doors and stepped out. They were in the guest bedroom, standing over the guy in my house. That's when I realized it was my neighbor. One of them shook his shoulder. He barely reacted, mumbling something before rolling over. When they got him to sit up, he looked confused and asked why they were there. When the police asked if he knew where he was, he slurred that he was home. He reeked of alcohol. They gave him a breath test anyway. It just confirmed what was obvious. After a few minutes, they got him on his feet and asked for his address. I confirmed he lived a couple of doors down. Then, They took him outside. The next day, he didn't remember anything. He apologized, embarrassed, and said it wouldn't happen again. He paid for the damage to the window. All the houses on our street are identical, same layout, same design. That, plus him being heavily intoxicated after a day and night of heavy drinking, was the main reason he ended up in my house instead of his own. There, he still lives with his parents and sleeps in the spare bedroom, so that's where he went. This happened 2 years ago. I live in a house with 2 floors and 3 bedrooms total. I share the place with my housemate Amanda, who I hadn't seen for a few days since she left for Chicago. Amanda had moved in 8 months before all this went down, after leaving her old apartment in the south side of the city. She was quiet about her past, and I didn't ask many questions. We worked different schedules. She did remote work for a tech company, and I worked in consulting at a Big 4 firm. Most days we only saw each other in passing, usually just saying hello in the kitchen. She'd mentioned this Chicago trip a few weeks ago, but I had forgotten the exact dates she'd be gone. One of the bedrooms is mine, one is Amanda's, and we turned the third into a home gym with some basic equipment. One night, I got home from work around 7 p.m. I was tired from work, so I put on my Spotify Wrapped playlist and sat on the couch. I sat there for about 15 minutes, just listening to music and checking my phone. The kitchen was at the back center of my house. I planned to cook something after changing clothes upstairs. I hadn't eaten since lunch, and I had some chicken that needed to be used. That was my normal routine. I'd get home and relax for a bit. After that, I'd change clothes before making dinner. In our house, we always kept the bedroom doors closed for privacy. That was just how we lived. Amanda and I both worked from home sometimes, so we liked having our own space. When one of us was gone, we definitely kept our doors closed. That's why I noticed something wrong when I went upstairs. Amanda's bedroom door was wide open. I stopped at the top of the stairs and looked at it. The room was dark inside. All the blinds were closed. I walked over towards her room slowly. I knew she was in Chicago, but I stopped at her doorway. I heard a man talking to himself inside, like he was arguing about something. His voice was quiet but angry. I backed away from the doorway slowly. I walked down the hallway as quietly as I could. My heart was beating fast, but I knew I couldn't run. If he heard me, he might come out of the room. When I got to the stairs, I moved faster. I needed to get out of the house and call the police. I decided the best place to do that would be from the safety of my car. But before that, I had to go to the back of the house to grab my car keys from the kitchen. I was reaching for my car keys on the kitchen hook when I heard a woman's voice. I turned around and saw her through the rear kitchen window. She was holding a baseball bat. She yelled something I couldn't hear through the glass. Then she ran toward the back door. I could hear her smashing the glass sliding door until it shattered. I started running toward the front door, just as the man from upstairs came down. He was tall and looked angry. He moved to block the front door, and I tried to get past him, but he was too big. The woman came in through the broken back door, leaving me trapped between them both. I managed to run past him toward the front door, but he grabbed my arm. I pulled away from him and ran outside to my car. I got in, started the engine. As I reversed out of the driveway, the woman smashed the front of the car with the baseball bat, but I kept reversing. I drove away before they could do any more damage. The police went inside and found both people in our house. The man was Craig, Amanda's ex-boyfriend from before she moved in with me. The woman was his new girlfriend. I had never met Craig, but Amanda had let him store some plastic containers in our garage when he lost his apartment. When questioned, Craig claimed he was just collecting his stored belongings. The police noticed that those containers held what looked like drug-making materials, something I had never recognized when walking past them. This gave them reason to search their car, where they also found meth. The police arrested them both and put me in a separate patrol car. The police questioned me for hours at the station. They also contacted Chicago PD to pick up Amanda for questioning. Craig eventually admitted during interrogation that we knew nothing about what was in those containers. Amanda got back from Chicago the next day. When I finally talked to her, she told me what I wish I'd known earlier. Craig had been texting her all week demanding his stuff back. She'd blocked his number the day prior to all this going down, after he threatened to come get his things himself.